and welcome to the Football 360 show. I am your host, JP Rock. Another great week of football we're going to be talking about. He is Matt Bierman. Matt, how you doing today?
Doing great. Great weekend of football.
Another great week of football. A little something for everybody out there. Football 360 show is brought to you by Wendy's in Chesterfield, Missouri Valley. It's a proud sponsor of Football 360. Work hard, play hard. Wendy's is family owned and operated, known for our pizza, wings, and live entertainment. You can have a great time and good friends inside or out on the heated patio. Wendy's also has carry out and online ordering. For great food and a great time, head to Wendy's, 18,000 Chesterfield Airport Road in Chesterfield, Missouri. Tell them you heard about them on the Football 360 show and let them know that Matt and JP personally sent you. So, another great week of football. How you been doing?
Doing great. I'm at that point of the week where we get to just kind of come down from last week's football and get ready to ramp into this week's of football. You know, this weekend of football.
Right.
So
huge news though. The story of the week. Producer Joe, let's go ahead and hit it. Story of the week in football.
Some pressure. Forget the pressure from Kansas City Chiefs fans. Do you realize how much pressure there was on you today from the Swifties to get Travis Kelce a touchdown with Taylor in the house today?
Yeah, I heard she was in the house.
Did you feel it? Did you feel the pressure, Patrick?
I felt a little bit of pressure. And so I knew I had to get it to Trav. And, of course, it's on a route that Travis, he does his own thing and just makes up a route, and I throw it to him. So I think he wanted to get in the end zone just as much as all the Swifties wanted him to.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having fun with that. That can deal with.
Forget the Super Bowl, Matt. That's the story of the year in NFL football.
Tell you what, fun fact, we talk to our quarterbacks a lot about this. That touchdown was 3 yards in the air, right? So from the line of scrimmage to, you know, he caught it was in the back of the end zone.
Right.
But it was a 3-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what Patrick Mahomes averaged last year on 41 touchdowns? How many yards?
What's that?
4.1 yards in the air.
Look at that.
4.1 yards in the air is all he threw the ball, and the rest was over. A lot of touchdowns just like that, though, from the short yardage, but pretty impressive. The longest one he had in the air last year, I think, was like 19 yards. So people think it's all this long ball game. He buys
it's a system.
Yeah, he buys time, and then he just said it. He's got Travis Kelce running routes, making up routes as he goes and getting open.
Right. Yeah, I had fun with that because it's really a joke. I mean, the whole. If that was the most important thing for you in football this past week, then get off my sport.
Yeah, I agree.
Just go away. So a lot of great stuff we're going to be talking about today. Going to be talking about the big Mizzou win that you were at.
Huge.
34-27. Nice to have football in St. Louis anytime you can, especially if it's Mizzou.
Yeah, it was fun. It's harkening back to the days of the Rams, getting to go down to the Dome.
Right.
And it was really good crowd. Mm-hmm. I took my son, so I didn't do much tailgating before we got in and got out. Right. We came from a football game, but good to see the local guys doing extremely well in the game, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So we got Brady Cook and Cody Schrader and Luther Burden. Those guys all did really well. And
just going to talk about those guys. Brady Cook, 18 for 25, 341 yards, 2 touchdowns, which, by the way, Mr. Cook is having himself a pretty good year. He's 72 of 100 for 1,073 yards and 7 touchdowns. And his passer rating is top 10 nationally.
So this offseason, one of the concerns, obviously, here in the media, and I even talked to Coach Drink about it, was Brady's ability to throw the ball down the field, like get deep, and which I find interesting because we just talked about that stat with, considered one of the best quarterbacks in the game. He's averaging 4.1 yards of a throw and for touchdowns. And, Cook obviously has, if you're playing Division I football, you've passed a lot of tests to be able to throw the ball deep. Yes. And, it's all relative to what
and Brady can do it.
Yeah, right.
He's been doing it since he was a freshman.
Yeah, right. You could throw the ball deep. I mean, I've witnessed him this summer right before training camp. He's throwing, 55 to 65 yards effortlessly. And, a matter is, can you protect? And do you have the time to get the ball out? And then do you have guys that can, beat coverage and get down and get over the top of the coverage and catch it? So they do right now, and so it's working. The last 2 games, he's had couple tremendous deep balls.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So great performance by Brady Cook. Mizzou Nation is loving Brady Cook right now, I understand. A lot of Brady Cook fan club presidents popping up. You know, they're having their little fan clubs. So great for him. Luther Burden, 10 receptions, 177 yards. That's the guy who, when he signed with Mizzou, everybody was waiting for and everybody was excited about.
Yeah, I mean, he's electric. I get a little worried. He throws his body around at the end of runs sometimes, a little bit more than I would like for one of our premier guys. But yeah, he's as advertised. He's getting out there, making plays. He's run. He's dynamic. They're getting the ball to him in different scenarios. I think a little bit more variety this year, which is good to see.
Right.
And obviously he's living up to all the hype.
And Cody Schrader, another great game. Cody is averaging 100 yards, over 100 yards per game.
We talked about him a couple weeks ago.
All guys we've talked about.
Yeah, this guy can flat out go, and it's pretty cool. I sent him. I just happened to film one shot in the end zone, and where we were seated. And after the game, sent him a video. He and Brady Cook a video of it, and it was a big, I think, third down, and he busts it out to the sideline and breaks a tackle, and he's gone. And it was really a big play, and. It's one of those things where it's surreal to see, I'm sure, for him. Like, he's living in the moment, but all it took to get to that moment, to be in St. Louis playing when he was kind of written off by a lot of people, and now he's proved them all wrong.
And he's such a great story, and he is proof that colleges need to really evaluate kids a little deeper than they are. To have him slip through the cracks like that. Yeah. This is a sign. Now, will they do it? Will they evaluate kids a little harder? Look at the Cody Schraders. There's a couple of those. We talked about one last week in Elijah Stevens. Yeah. Another really good running back. Is he a kid that's going to get a look? And Cody actually, with his over 100 yards in every game, leads the SEC.
Yeah. So, and something to look at too. And I talk to a lot of different college coaches, as I know you do. But one thing that does not line up all that well sometimes is how much a kid really loves football.
Yes.
So years ago, we had a young man named Brandon Shepard who was getting recruited by Oklahoma State, and a guy named Todd Monken. So I got to know Todd pretty well, and excellent coach, very intense. He's actually a Southern Illinois, got Southern Illinois roots, but super intense guy. But he said to me, and it always stuck with me, and I was a little bit younger in my coaching career, but we were eating lunch, and he said, one thing I love about Brandon Shepard is Brandon loves the sport of football. He talks about football. He can explain to you about the game, but he also is a fan of football in the sense that he's watching games, understands what he's looking at, and he actually loves football. He's like, a lot of these guys, you talk to them, they're high-level recruits, they don't even like football.
Right.
So if it's not something you're in love with, are you really going to do the extra work and all the things that are necessary in a college environment, right?
Right.
And so at the end of the day, Coach Monken was correct. That is very important. Those types of things shouldn't be overlooked. So in the case of Cody Schrader, he matched up athletically with the skill sets that he had. But more than that, the kid is a worker, and he wants to do well in the game of football. So those coaches got to start really doing some digging and figuring out who those guys are, because they're going to get to your program and they can change it.
And that should be part of the evaluation process
100%.
That goes on. Everybody has their own evaluation process. Some of these schools have gotten really big staffs. I mean, I remember where there was like a coach who was, quote unquote, the recruiting coordinator, and he had an assistant, and that was it.
Yeah.
And they did all the homework in that, and they were very highly successful doing that. You got a lot of people on staffs now who are part of the recruiting department, and there's not as much of an evaluation process, which is how somebody like Cody kind of slips through the cracks.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, very interesting
how that's developed. But great Mizzou win. We're going to talk a little bit about some other college stuff, some Lindenwood football. We're going to talk about. You were telling me you just had a talk with Coach Stuttgart. And
Coach Stuttgart is just such a good person. He's a great guy. He's a guy that you want your son playing for. They're doing things the right way. They're obviously in a tough transition period right now, from bumping up to
football now, yeah.
D1. And they didn't lose a lot of kids in that process. So they've had kids that they recruited at the D2 level that now they're trying to get guys that are going to be more competitive and more parity at that level of D1, and he is on a path though where they're going to get that thing. He relayed a story to me that he's talked to different coaches, and he had a player walk up to him after their last game, and the kid said something to the effect of, "Hey, you're sitting on a gold mine," and what really interesting that a player would say that, but I had actually repeated the same thing, that sentiment to him earlier in the conversation, because they have a great campus, great location. Besides that, they run the mega camp, which we can talk about, which is like the best recruiting camp in the Midwest, if not the country.
It is.
And it's got a great buzz to it. It's got great results. And Coach Stugart's right there in the middle of it. And he's a great asset for the St. Louis area in football. Does an excellent job.
Everything is in place for that to be a highly successful program.
100%.
Yeah, and that's really important. That's really huge. We could talk a little bit about some of the other colleges in the state and how everybody's doing. We also spoke a little bit last week about the big Desmet CBC game that happened. A little bit of a shocker.
Yeah, I think it was a coming out party for Dillon Duff as a quarterback at Desmet. Unfortunately, I think that the game probably could have been a little tighter. There was a few unfortunate.
That's the shocker. Yeah,
a few unfortunate, things that didn't go CBC's way early, and then it kind of got out of control. And then they had a long touchdown on a 4th down gamble that got called back. It was like 90-plus yards by Jeremiah McClellan. Mm-hmm. And those are backbreakers. As a coach, you can appreciate that one sideline's going crazy and excited at Desmet. You can also feel the angst and disappointment when you're, when it comes down to a call that probably was a little bit suspect to begin with. So I think it'll be set up to be a great rematch. They get to play each other. It
will, and it's a surprise from the standpoint of the score. That it got to that kind of score. Not a surprise to me that Desmet won because, like I said, we said last week, Desmet has kind of been overlooked. In the preseason, Desmet was overlooked. They have the athletes. They have a bunch of college caliber players out there. Dillon Duff is one. He's on the rise. He's a quarterback on the rise, one of those really, really good 2025 quarterbacks that are all over the state. I saw one on Friday night in Brady Davidson. And, they have great defensive players. You have Caleb Brad. You have Michael Phillips. You have Ashton Phillips. Those kind of guys. They have a sophomore who's really good, 6'5", 235-pound kid named Titan Davis, another defensive end. You have those caliber athletes on both sides of the ball. Mike Cunningham, who you're very familiar with.
Yeah, he's
one of the best offensive linemen.
Yep.
So not surprised that Desmet won, but just the score. And Desmet is a team that could go pretty far, in the playoffs.
Definitely. It sets up that they'll get to play each other if I'm down line, right, in the district. So,
which is a shame.
Yeah, it really is, and that continually happens. But I think it'll be a big game. I think there'll be a lot of people there. There'll be a lot of people rooting for both their respective sides, and then just a lot of people that are football fans wanting to see a good game.
Right.
But yeah, they definitely changed it up. They put some heavy sets and ran the ball with Mr. King, and he was running hard. And I had not seen that at any of their games.
Jason King?
Yeah, Jason King. And,
really?
They put him in a heavy set in the backfield.
No kidding.
And Jason was running really well, and I think it kind of caught him off guard.
Absolutely. Jason, by the way, is a 6'2", 210-plus pound linebacker, junior linebacker who has a bunch of D1 offers to play linebacker. So him at running back.
Put him at running back.
Oh, yes. You place your best athletes where they can help you win.
And I'll tell you, I look at Dillon Duff and his performance, and he's a kid that very rarely. So I've been training quarterbacks for 20 plus years, and very rarely do I talk to parents about where I project a kid.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Yeah. So in our role, we're really working with them on like, hey,
you're developing.
This is what we're doing. This is the game plan. This is how we're going to do this, and this is the steps we're going to take to get him where he needs to be. And he's a big basketball family. His sister plays soccer at Clemson.
Dad played at SLU.
Yeah, and so I could sense that there was a lot of basketball going on in the family just from talking to he and he has a twin brother as well.
Good basketball player.
Yeah. We have a very good basketball player. So we were, he might have been 7th going into 8th. And I pulled his dad aside and I said, hey, I'm just going to shoot you straight here. I know you guys love basketball, but I'm telling you, if he sticks with this, he's a Division I quarterback. I think he's probably the second kid I've ever done that with. And I think the other one was Blaine Gabbert when he was in 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade.
Right.
It was pretty obvious that he was a guy. But Dillon was a guy that I said to him early on, hey, he needs to probably start dedicating himself to this a little bit more because he has the innate ability to make different throws. But on top of that, he can run. And he's real similar to like a Brady Cook in the sense that once he gets going, he's gone. I mean, he hits that sideline, he can run. He's powerful when he runs.
He is. I think people might be surprised. He has deceptive speed.
Yes.
Actually, it's not really that deceptive. He's a pretty fast kid himself.
Yep.
And so he has that ability. And I remember talking to Dillon as well because I knew the basketball background and the football. And I always ask kids, when there are kids who play basketball and they play football, I always ask them, what do you love? And I know Dillon loved basketball, but they have to see that they need to perform in the sport that is going to take them the farthest. Yes. And that was it with Dillon. And I talk to a lot of kids. I see a lot of kids who are between 5'11" and 6'4", 6'5", love the game of basketball. There's a gentleman who I just saw a couple weeks ago. I going to play his interview a little bit later on, named Brock Camp. He's a good basketball player. He has some low, offers for basketball, but he's 6'7", 240, just a monster tight end. And he's seeing that, his better recruitment is coming in basketball. So unless you have a great shot, great handles, the moves, you're dominant in basketball between 5'11" and say 6'4", 6'5", and you can play football, you need to play football.
Yeah, I learned early on in my coaching career that there is definitely a battle. Oftentimes with those two sports in particular, right? When you get guys that are really athletic.
That's the most,
I had a kid who was 5'4", 5'5", and apparently an unbelievable basketball player, but I had only seen him play football, and coach was like, oh, he's unbelievable basketball. I said, yeah, he's pretty darn small for playing that game, right? As he projectability. Yeah, but he can survive in football, right? I mean, he gets a little taller, he's going to survive. He has to get a lot taller to thrive. And at the time, Allen Iverson was a big deal. And Allen Iverson's not the. Allen Iverson was what 6'2" plus.
6'1", 6'2".
Yeah, so but he's an anomaly as well, right? There's not many of those running around. So I learned early on that there is that constant back and forth, and but football. There's more spots on the field.
Yes.
There's more scholarships available.
Right.
And oftentimes those guys that are high performers on the basketball court are high performers on the football. Football is a game of athletes.
It translates well.
Football is a game of athletes, right? The other quick the point to that is years ago when the Rams were here, we had, we trained the GM, Les Snead, his son, Taylor Morton, who's the director of player personnel for them. We trained his son, who's now a college football coach. And we were sitting in my office, and I brought up a kid. We had a kid show up that was like 6'7", hadn't played football since like a sophomore year of high school, played basketball.
Right.
And I brought his name up and said, hey, this guy's got aspirations to play, beyond, now that he's done with college, he's done with basketball, he's looking at football. You would think that guy would be null and void, out of their question immediately. Well, how big is he? How fast is he? What's his jumping? What's his catch? What does he look like? Can he catch the ball? What's his catch radius? And immediately they start doing their homework on this kid, right? Who played at a mid-level basketball, but he had the height and he had speed, so it intrigued them. So football is a really strange game. It's one of the only ones that you don't need to play your entire life to be a high-level guy. If you're a really good athlete and you can adapt and learn, and you can play. I mean, and you can start at different times. Right. So I think you harken back to some of our better players. They didn't start till middle school, right? And I think that's one of those common questions is, when do I start playing football, right? When should I let my child start playing football? And my perspective as someone that's seen it all, sometimes some kids are at a point where they have to play. Like you want that, that's all they want to do. They're obsessed with the game. But
you run the risk of burnout too, so you really got to time it right, and we're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit more. But if you are 6'4", 6'5" post player, play football. Charles Harris comes to mind. Remember Charles Harris played for Mizzou, played for the Miami Dolphins. He was a 6'4" guy. He did not get his Mizzou offer till the last weekend, the very last week. He was going to go play like in whatever low level college
now
basketball.
He's made millions of dollars.
Now, right. First round draft pick.
Yeah.
Became a first round draft pick. And, 6'4" guy who was able to do that. Ryan Joseph's another guy who I remember talking to early when he was playing both basketball and football. And I remember talking to his dad, and he's a guy who loved the game of basketball. Well, he's a Mizzou Tiger. He signed with Mizzou. Playing down at Washington, Missouri. And he's a guy who you're very familiar with, who was a skinny, 6'6", 215, 220-pound kid playing basketball, loved basketball.
Yep.
Now he's 6'7". What is he, about 300? He's 300, right?
Yeah, and a lot of those guys transition, especially when they're like tackles, when they finally transition over towards football.
Great, yeah.
They want to be tight ends first, right? Because you see the
Ryan tried that.
He tried that.
Played on boom, 7-on-7 as tight end.
7-on-7,
yeah.
and then he was like, hey, I'm going to start doing more traditional.
Yeah. He came off the field. He's like, I think I'm going to try tackle.
Yeah. I don't catch the ball all the time.
Right.
But yeah, those guys they're worth a lot in the game when you can find them.
Absolutely, the basketball to offensive line footwork. Transitions is perfect. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, some recruiting stuff coming up. But back to the Mizzou game, you were at it. We actually have sound from Coach Drinkwitz and his presser. Let him go ahead and say a few things.
Creative team here too. A lot of pressure.
Great to be opening SEC play. Always tough to start out on the road. First road game of the year. We know that Vanderbilt and Coach Lee present some unique challenges. I have a lot of respect for Coach Lee and what he's accomplished there at Vanderbilt so far. The work he's done for that program, the excitement he's built, obviously the investments that they've made into that program and developing it speak to the type of leadership he has and the commitment he has to Vanderbilt. I think his players are a direct reflection of that. His ability to connect to those players, connect to the mission. I think he's done an outstanding job. Obviously, we've had two very difficult games against him the past two contests, both into the fourth quarter, and offensively had to make a drive down there 2 years ago, and last year had to have a 4th-and-1 stop to secure the victory. Their offensive scheme is very challenging. They have some really talented players. I think their wide receiver groups is as good as anybody in the SEC. Obviously, I think Will Shepard is an all SEC caliber wide receiver and plays at a high level. He's got elite ball skills, ability to make catch in traffic, create separation. Their quarterback, A.J. Swan, has very good accuracy, sits in the pocket, can deliver the football all over the field, and I know he's been a little bit beat up. But they have capable backups. Kenny Sills started out here 3 years ago against us, so know that they have a deep quarterback room.
So that was Coach Drinkwitz talking about their next opponent, Vanderbilt, who is coming in. Actually, they're going down there. Vanderbilt's 2-3. They just lost to Kentucky 45-28. They're going to start SEC play. But Coach Drinkwitz was really excited following the Memphis game. Great win, great showing in St. Louis, where the Tigers are trying to recruit heavily. And you were there, and some of your observations from the day.
Yep, my observations were, one, I forgot how loud the dome can get.
Right.
It wasn't even at full capacity, but there was a very good crowd there. Obviously, a lot of black and gold. I know that they got beat up pretty bad about the field surface, not that it was a inferior field. I think the aesthetics of it, we're so used to seeing these deep green, beautiful looking new fields, and that turf is probably a little bit past its prime. But at the end of the day, like I think the Tigers did what they were supposed to do. Memphis is a darn good football team.
They are.
And Ryan Silverfield, the head coach there, they come up and recruit in our area, and he's a good guy. He's got NFL experience. They're no joke, and that program has spawned a number of coaches who've come through there and then have gone
without
on done bigger and better things. But that's a really good Memphis Tiger team. I know some people were like, "Oh, we should have beaten by more," but they were a scrappy team. They had a good game plan. They defensively. We exploited them a few times, but offensively they would get in third downs, and they had a good process, and they executed quite well.
Very good team. Tigers, 7-point win over them, and now they're on to Vanderbilt to start SEC play. Vanderbilt again on the road playing Vanderbilt. They're not going to be a joke either.
No, that's a dangerous game. I mean, a number of years ago, that the reason why Coach Drink is the head coach at Mizzou is it was a game that Coach Odom pretty much sealed his fate when they lost there. They lost a heartbreaker at Vanderbilt, and I think that was the beginning of the end. Oddly enough, Coach Odom's at UNLV, and they played Vanderbilt a few weeks ago and beat them.
Yeah.
So and UNLV is off to a pretty darn good start.
They absolutely are. Another team that's recruiting the Missouri area. Mm-hmm. They have two very big commitments out of the Kansas City area, and Melvin Laster and a defensive tackle, both from Liberty North.
Yep.
So Barry Odom coming back here, recruiting hard.
Yeah, you got Cornell Ford is back recruiting St. Louis.
Cornell Ford's there, Michael Shearer's there.
Yeah.
And so the Missouri or St. Louis to UNLV to Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're
STL Vegas.
Apparently their facilities, talking to Coach Odom, are unbelievable. They've invested a lot of energy and money into their program, and then they get to play their games where the Raiders play at the Allegiant Stadium.
And you have the whole backdrop of Las Vegas when kids come on the recruiting trip.
Yeah, food's probably pretty good. The entertainment's probably pretty good.
The entertainment's probably the best.
Pretty unique.
Any recruiting trip, you go to Vegas.
Yeah, that's like one of your official visits, right?
You would have to make that one of your 5,
you gotta do
right?
That.
You could have all SEC schools, 4 SEC schools, and then you just want to go to Vegas.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Vegas.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go.
That's exactly what I do. So we talked a little bit of Lindenwood 2-2, and you said you talked to Coach, and thoughts on their season so far.
I feel like they probably are not performing at the level they want, but I think that they know that freshman class that they brought in, a lot of those guys are kind of getting seasoned and brought into the equation. And I think that's going to bode well for the future for them. I think they're going to have a really good next few years as they start to kind of catch up. I mean, they're playing catch up with teams like SEMO that have been Division I for quite some time, so they've been recruited to that level. So I think that's taking nothing away from the kids that are currently at Lindenwood. I think it's just you got to match your game more to what the style of the conference you're playing in. So.
Right. And they're on their way. They have a pretty good start to their recruiting class for this year, for 2024. Demetrius Jones from Lutheran North is a huge commit.
Yes.
Defensive line. He's going to be a guy who's an impact guy. They currently have a guy, I think he's leading them in sacks right now, Kobe McClendon.
Yeah. Yeah, Kobe actually
we're familiar with.
Works for us a little bit in the offseason, and great kid. He was a freshman All-American last year.
He is a great kid.
Yeah, and gets after it. But that's the one thing is that program, a lot of those young men we know, they help with our business in the offseason. Just good, high-character kids. They don't put up with a lot of extracurriculars. There's no
reflection of the coach.
Yeah, he's a strong individual who has conviction about who he is and what his morals are, and he coaches to it. And I think, you find people in the game like that, and they're the people that eventually in the long game, if you're playing the long game, they win. The hot, flashy guys that everybody wants to be around, that has the tendency to burn out as well.
It's one of those guys out in Colorado.
It's an interesting scenario. Now their back's against the wall. I mean, the narrative has changed. Now they're playing USC this weekend. It's going to be really interesting to see how they rebound and how they match up. And Lincoln Riley and USC is no joke. Coming off of that, they got beat pretty handedly by Oregon.
Right. So that's going to be an interesting matchup with there. But Lindenwood, they really have an opportunity to be a really good program based on the talent that is in the surrounding area. Yes. Just off the St. Louis area. And I know they're recruiting it pretty hard. Yep. A bunch of offers just went out to some guys, this past weekend, and they have some decent recruits that are already committed to them.
Yeah, I mean, they got Pops Battle from East St. Louis.
Pretty good one, yeah.
Yeah, they got Quinn Brown, who had a bunch of different offers, and as soon as Lindenwood offered, he committed.
He did commit.
And there's a number of players that I know that if Lindenwood offers, they're committing. And I think, there's that one side of it is like, oh, I need to go really far away to go to school.
Yeah.
One of the things I think it's something we can touch on is, historically, kids that go too far away out of what we would call our recruiting region have not fared very well, right? If you go to a place where there's you're too far away and they don't really recruit St. Louis as part of their overall structure of recruiting in their territory, you can get left and you can get what we call recruited over, right? They'll recruit right over the top of you.
Yes.
And kids are not very hip to that game and understanding like that's how it actually works. So, you're one coach away from that guy moving or leaving, and you're not the guy anymore. I mean, I can tell you story after story where, we have a kid that's a quarterback that's down at a school on the East Coast. They changed coaches after his recruiting. He signed, and he's there. He's a quarterback, high-level quarterback.
That's the worst.
And he says something to the guy to the effect of, well, what am I doing here? You recruited me as a quarterback. And the coach looks dead in his face and goes, I didn't recruit you. That other guy recruited you. That's how it's a dirty business.
Well, and that goes back to what I said last week, how it is a business.
Yeah.
And you have to look at it. And sometimes you're right. It is a dirty business. Mm-hmm. And so you have to protect yourself. When you're being recruited, when you're a recruit, you have to protect yourself. You have to look at it strictly from a business standpoint. And I know that it's really easy to get caught up. A lot of pretty girls there. You have a really pretty hostess who, says all the right things, fun parties, a lot of good stuff. But you need to treat it as a business.
Yeah, and on top of that, like what we were talking about, like in the region. So if you're at a Missouri school or Illinois or even Kentucky, Arkansas, that region, it's pretty easy for those guys to not want to get into a situation where they have coaches that are aware of
bingo. I know
how they've recruited you and mistreated people. They won't send guys that way. So that's a give and take, right? So you're going to get the benefit of the doubt. Right. If you're not doing what you're supposed to do on and off the field, that's different. But if you're there and you're generally doing what's asked of you and you'll get a fair shot. I've seen where we have kids that go down to Florida, we have kids that go down to Texas, we have kids that go out to California. It's a tough road to hoe.
It's easy to get lost.
You can count on one hand how many of them have been successful.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where I just really caution parents and kids that you need to know what you're involved in because, and how this works. Like, coaches move. Coaches bounce around. Yes, there is a thing called the transfer portal, but the majority of the kids that enter the transfer portal don't have anywhere to end up to go play. So You could be the hottest recruit and then turn into a guy that's looking for just a school to play at.
I heard there's something like 5,000 to 8,000 kids who entered a transfer portal, and they have no school, no place to land. And back to what you were saying, and this isn't an endorsement for the local schools. However, I will say, based on what you were saying, and I've seen it a lot, when you go to a school that is local, that recruits this area, right, and they're local, they're going to need to come back to this area to recruit. They will make sure, they're more apt to make sure that you have all of the chances to be successful because it just makes them look good. If you go, like you said, you go to Southern California, you go to some school in Florida, nobody knows what, if you don't pan out next. Doesn't matter. If you don't pan out, if you're a big-time player, you go to one of the locals and you don't pan out, everybody questions why. Well, what did the coach do? Why didn't they develop them? So it does matter.
So I had a number of years ago was dealing with a coach in Florida with a kid that we were training, and he was a receiver, mid-size, fast, really good by the standards of St. Louis. And I said, hey, what do you think about him? And he said to me, in all honesty, he's like, I'm in South Florida. He's like, I could swing a bat and hit 50 dudes that look just like him.
Yeah, you know. That's true. However, and not to insult anybody, but Florida, Alabama, the Southeast can be overrated.
Yes.
A lot of people think, I could go to Florida, I could go to Texas. No. Look at the successful guys. Look at Brady Cook. Look at what he's doing. Look at Luther Burden. I can list off. It's crazy the amount of D1 talent. And I got to tell you what, I do this for a living. I have data going down to 2030. People, the talent is not drying up anytime soon.
No, and I think it's smart that our kids stay in areas where and with people that can help proactively enhance their career. Right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that same school, different coaching staff, we had a kid that ended up there that was a former 4-star, 5-star guy who did not even see the field because they had other guys that they deemed more important. Yeah. And particularly when you get in Florida and Texas, like those high school coaches, they have a lot of pull with the local colleges. And if you start screwing with their guys, that you're
not coming back here.
Yeah, you're not coming back. It just dries up. So
don't bother.
I don't know that people quite understand that there is that business side of it. And guys like ourselves, we've experienced it. We've seen it at every level of the game. Mm-hmm. And it's not. We're not just saying this to just No,
it's 100% a business.
Truth.
It's 100% a business. It's a job application. When you're performing, when you're being recruited, you're applying for a job. Mm-hmm. And so it's perfectly fine if you accept that job, right? But if before your start date, somebody comes and offers you a better position, a better job, it's perfectly fine for you to go that route. Because just like you might be doing that, the place that that is hiring you, i.e. the college, they're constantly looking for the best talent that's going to help them. And so they will last minute, make the switch. Be like, hey, we found this guy who we like better. And I've seen that happen. I've seen guys who signing day get told, we've moved in a different direction. And people are left, well, what do I do now? So
another facet to that whole, dilemma is understanding that coach also is looking for improvement in the programs he's at. So a great story. It involves Barry Odom. It involves a guy named Gabe Kuhn and a coach that was at SIU at the time, many removed from the staff that's there now. And Gabe Kuhn he was a Lafayette offensive lineman.
I remember Gabe. Yeah.
And Barry Odom had told me that when he was a coach at Memphis at the time, he had just left Mizzou to go to Memphis, and he said that they had him rated as the top offensive lineman in the state of Missouri. They got in late on him, and he was committed to go to SIU. So they offered him to come down on an official visit to see Memphis, and he wanted to go, right? So he told the coach from SIU, like, hey, I got invited to this. I'd like to go check it out. This is like 2 weeks before signing date. And the coach told him, if you go, you will lose your scholarship here.
Yep. You lose your spot. Yep.
You lose your spot. We are all about loyalty here. We need you to be loyal. We need you to understand that you committed to us, da-da-da-da. Gabe goes and does a unofficial, doesn't take an official, goes down and visits that weekend just so he can check it out on his own. Right. Doesn't make it an official deal just because he wants to see. They offer him. He decides that over the next week or so that he's going to go to Memphis, and he calls me and says, his dad calls me and says, hey, you're not going to believe this, because they were like absolutely torn up about this, because you have this one side you can go to play for Memphis, which is a rising program. Mm-hmm. SIU is a great program, but he was going to go. He wanted to play a little bit higher level football. The coach that talked to him about loyalty, mm-hmm. the coach that really drove the nail in and made him feel horrible,
took another job.
He left.
Yeah,
and so. That's the thing, is that you have to be cognizant of the fact that they're like, I say the college coaches are like gypsies. They move all over the place, and that's just part of how their job works. If you look,
right.
An easy thing to do, go look at the coach's bio and look how long he stays at places. The guy that's recruiting you, look at his coach's bio and see how long he stayed at those schools. If he's a 5-year guy, that's pretty stable. If every 2 years he's at a new place, the younger coaches, they're going to bounce around a lot more.
Yes.
The older, more established ones, obviously they'll stick around. But there are older coaches that bounce every year or two. You got to be aware of that. If that's the guy recruiting you, if he recruits you and he leaves, you have to understand that puts you in a really bad situation. The other thing you have to understand is if you're a quarterback and you're getting recruited by a little bit further away and you're not dealing with the offensive coordinator or quarterback coach, run for the hills. If you are an offensive lineman and you're getting recruited by a defensive back coach that recruits your area, you're not going to have anybody stand on the table for you in those meetings, because he won't be in the offensive meeting. He's in the defensive meetings. Your goal is to be with somebody that's recruiting. You can't control it, but you want to build relationships with the guy that's going to be coaching you. And you also want to make sure that, as best you can, that they're going to be there while you're there.
Building relationships is huge, and it's perfectly fine to explore your options. In fact, it's preferable that you explore all your options, because like you're just saying, the coaches are doing the same thing. No matter how much anybody loves you, they're going to do what's best for them. You need to do what's best for you, and this is why it's good if you have an adult, a parent, mom, dad, somebody close to you that's an adult that can help you, understand and read the personality of the person that you're dealing with, the person that's recruiting you, because, you're young, but use their life experience. Rely on their life experience to help guide you and understand people, because, everybody knows what to say to make people feel good, to make people feel loved, but you need to look deeper than that and treat it from a business perspective and what's best for you. And hopefully you have a parent who is looking out for your best interests. And hopefully your parent isn't easily swayed or easily impressed by some sweet talk, because there's a lot of sweet talk.
I forgot the young man's name, but he was the top defensive back in the country last year that went to Colorado. I read an article this week where people were upset that he's not playing much. And Deion Sanders, remember, so they wooed this kid to get him to switch over. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And he's not played much as a true freshman. And I think we take for granted, though, how hard it is to play as a true freshman and produce. But he is not playing. And Deion's response was, well, he needs to show up on meetings on time. He needs to come in and be prepared. He needs to be focused on the practice field. He needs to do all those things. See, he probably bought into the lie that he really is a 5-star.
He's the guy, yeah.
He's the guy. What he doesn't understand is there's guys there like Cody Schrader that don't care that you're a 5-star. They'll eat your lunch. Mm-hmm. They don't care. Like, they are there. They're a little bit more schooled in the game.
They're not just happy to be there.
And they're hungry.
Yeah.
And they're hungry. And I think, that's a life lesson. That's not just in football. That's in everything, right?
Right. I think people, especially fans, don't necessarily realize all the time how difficult that transition is from high school ball to college ball. And you see it all the time, and Luther Burden is a good example, right? Last year, there were people upset, number one guy in the country, or he was a 5-star, and people were upset he wasn't doing what they expected based upon, the hype that recruiting services and others had placed on it. Well, look at him this year. Look at the difference. If you pay close attention, look at the difference. Look at the different things that he's doing, right? And so it took a little bit. Took a year, that maturation process to kick in. Now, everybody, he 10 catches, 177 yards. That's the guy. That's the guy they were waiting for.
So I was just sitting here thinking as you're talking about that, I call it like the game day visit syndrome. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you talk to a high school junior or senior that's on a visit, they stand on the Mizzou sideline or the SIU or Missouri State, wherever they go, Kansas State.
Lindenwood.
Lindenwood.
Yep.
They go to the game day visit, and they sit there. They watch their position group. They watch the warm-up, and they quickly surmise, I could beat that guy. I'm better than that guy.
Yeah.
And the parents kind of think in that same vein, right?
Yeah.
What they're not understanding is they're equating themselves to what they're doing at the high school level versus what's going on at the college level.
Totally
I
different
can tell you the speed at which they move at the college level versus the high school is warp speed. I can also tell you, not from experience, I can tell you that from experience, but from experience of working with our NFL guys, the speed at which the ball comes out, the speed at which they block is warp speed versus college, right?
Right.
And so, it's really easy when you're sitting there and it's like watching an NFL game telling everybody what they should have done,
right?
Not having the slightest clue of actually what play was called or what they could have really done. I think it's really interesting to watch all the armchair quarterbacks, but then the same phenomena happens with players thinking they are better than what they really are and not respecting the fact that they're going to have to work harder than they ever have to even be viewed as a possible starter, if not player.
Right.
Just to play.
Just to play. And that comes from the work that is put in. A lot of it's natural ability. Some people are blessed with, gifted with natural physical ability. But the guys that make it and the guys that make it the farthest just keep building. And I spoke about that last week or the week before that. It's not just doing the work. They build on that. And so they might have been fast in high school, but they kept building, became faster in college, kept building they wanted to play pro football, became faster, even faster. And just because the guys make it into the NFL, like you said, you work with NFL guys all the time, right? Yeah. Because they want to get better. They want that edge.
Well,
they want to be able to, they want to be able to play, right? Otherwise, guess what? Poof, you're out the door. It's real easy.
Yeah, I'm sure you probably saw it this past week. It was end of last week, early this week. Big buzz on social media with Tom Brady gave an interview at a business symposium, and he talks about his career. And it's not a straight line. It's a bunch of dotted lines, bunch of movement of events. But one thing that you listen to him and talk about, like the competitiveness, the figuring out that he needed work. He had to go work with someone, a guy named Tom Martinez, who started training him. And then he also started working with a mental coach in college. And what I found most interesting about his story is, he started as a junior, but his senior year, he was told that he had to recompete, and he had a pretty decent junior year. And he's thinking to himself, like, oh my gosh, what's? But that experience, I don't know right now if anybody wants to deal with that experience because they'll just up and leave and go somewhere else, right? And I think. I would look at Brady Cook as a great example of that. He had some, a lot of negative things go on that probably a lot of people are aware of and not aware of that happened, a year or two into his career. And, the fact that he stuck it out and he's now doing what he's doing, I think it makes it even better. But I think that experience probably helped play into it. Tom Brady's experience certainly led to the point where he had a chip on his shoulder and he worked so hard that nobody was going to outdo him. No one was going to outwork him.
Yep, and that's important. That's everything. You mentioned social media. Speaking of social media, catch me on social media, JP Rock MO, on Twitter, JP Rock Scouts U, Instagram. Check out the show at Football360.
Football360 show, yeah.
Yep, Football360 show on Twitter. And then your own personal...
It's just Elite Football Academy on Instagram, and then Elite Football on Twitter. Yeah, definitely on our YouTube.
Follow, subscribe.
Yeah,
hit the little
definitely
ding button.
Whatever. Yeah, we would. We're getting a lot of really good people talking about what feedback. The buzz that what we're talking about because, at the end of the day, like our jobs and what we do is helping other people. Like I didn't get into coaching because it was about me, right? It's not Matt Bierman's Elite Football Academy. It has nothing to do with that. Like it's all about like production and helping kids get to where they want to go. And I think, if we can provide a roadmap for people, we're getting good feedback that people want to hear what we're talking about. And I think, believe me, sometimes we might sound like broken records, but it is when you boil it down to its most simple
we're really good
aspects,
broken records.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple process though. Like if you listen to what we're talking about, you get involved and you start to develop. You can go where you want to go in this game, and you could apply this to other sports as well. It's not just football. Right. But as we talk about social media, this is an important time of year. Like kids are starting to say, okay, hey, we're 5-6 games in, depending on where they are in the country. What do I need to do? Well, how do I get noticed by college coaches? The oldest trick in the book is go on their website, fill out the recruiting questionnaires for colleges, right? Get you on their database. The other thing you need to be doing is focus on your Twitter bio, with your
so important
your real name. How about that? So I search kids all the time and cannot find them. If I can't find you, college coaches can't find you. You need to have a dedicated page just for your recruiting or just who you are. You need to make sure your name, your school, your graduation year, height, weight, GPA. Make sure you have your huddle link pinned at the top. Those huddle highlights should be updated every single week with your best plays going to the front. I always look at it as it's like a movie preview. We've all seen those previews where you watch this thing, it entices you and goes in, and then you watch the movie, you're like, oh my God, I already saw all that. I saw all those clips in the preview.
Right.
The best parts need to be at the front.
Your very best play needs to be the very first thing on your huddle clip. Yeah. And I will tell you from talking to college coaches, they do not spend a lot of time looking at your film if they are not impressed with the first 3 plays. Going back in the day when everything was on DVD, they'd have to get kids DVD. If the first couple plays did not impress them, they'd punch it, kick it out, and never look at it again. So you need to have your very best play first, followed by your second best play, and then work backwards from that. A lot of kids want to build. They think that they're going to build, I'm going to show this block. Right? No. You need to have your most impressive play first because college coaches are busy. College coaching staffs are very busy. They're not going to spend a lot of time digging on you. We talked about the evaluation process. They have their evaluation processes, and some of it's not very in-depth. They want instant gratification, just like you as a player want instant gratification in the things in your life. They're looking for the real deal first. And you're absolutely right. That's most important.
Well, yeah, that's the other common mistake is they have no context of what these plays are you're putting on there, right? They are assessing, will you fit into their system? Mm-hmm. Can you, if let's say it's a receiver, are you good at running intermediate routes? Are you just a guy that runs deep every time? Is all your highlights just go routes? Like, okay, that's a dime a dozen. Can you run inside? What do you do once you get the ball in your hand? They have no context. They don't care if it was a 4th down, game-winning catch or you got out of bounds and stopped the clock. They don't care about that. They have no context. They don't know, and they're not going to take the time to figure out that was the record-breaking catch for your high school. Right? They don't know. They don't care. That's the other thing is like stats are important, but at the end of the day, they're looking at projectability, right? They want to know, do you fit the mold of the guys that they have in their room that look similar, or are you going to be a guy that breaks the mold and you have more size or speed or whatever it might be?
I think that's a hard thing for a lot of kids to understand is stats does not equate college recruitment. Okay? Just because you can be the state record holder in rushing, passing, whatever, does not mean you're going to be a heavily recruited college football prospect. Mm-hmm. And that's some kids don't quite understand it. So you're absolutely right. I've seen kids who don't have the numbers, but they look at their film, they see him in person, and they project what he's going to be for them.
So look at Brady Cook, right? That's the knock. Well, he didn't have a bunch. His high school career was average. It wasn't great.
Well, look at Blaine Gabbert.
I mean, I coached him in high school. I watched it. Firsthand. And
missed a lot of time.
Yeah, he was dinged up, and the system, I would say, was not – he was maybe a little ahead of the system a little bit.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is I watched him in a game against Webster Groves. I was on the sideline, and he had 2 really long runs. And little inside story is they were both botched. the running back didn't take the ball. This is kind of before all the zone read stuff. And he kept the ball and split the defense, and at 6'4", 230 pounds, whatever.
His athleticism
just
off the chart.
Split the defense, ran away from everybody on the field, right? And then he did it again. And I told his dad that night, I said, watch out. Like he was, I think, a sophomore year.
Right.
Watch out.
Yeah. That's when I saw him. I was at a game. Amazing. I saw him against Timberland. So it was him against Monty Ball.
I was there.
Right. I was scouting both those guys. And it was just like crazy. Both had great games. And you know right then when you see somebody, they're a guy.
They look different. They definitely look different.
Definitely look different.
Yeah,
both
how they carry themselves and
going on to the NFL. So any other tips or tricks for guys with their
just
recruitment?
making sure that you are, and then DMing coaches, making sure that Twitter just changed some rules on how you can DM, but making sure that you're getting all your social media right now this time of year should be pointing towards you connecting with colleges, right? If you're really serious about it, keep all your antics and all the different stuff, all your personal stuff. Keep that off of there because they don't want to see it. But
it goes back to it being a business.
Yeah.
You're trying to be professional as possible with your social media.
Yep. And I think just having a solid highlight film that you take care of every week rather than waiting to the end of the season is a big deal. I think making sure that you do have those hot plays up front are really important, and then also just making sure you're on their radar and you're sending to them. And every coach you can find on there, you send it to them, right? You don't know who's going to do it. I always say they will watch the film. Yeah. It might be one clip, but they're going to watch it. They have to do their due diligence on everybody. They don't want
to miss some guy. And I would also recommend tagging somebody like me, at JPRockMO, because when guys tag me with their highlight film weekly, I retweet it. And guess what? I have a bunch of college coaches who follow me, and they respect what I do in my evaluation process, guys. So they'll look at it.
Yep.
So I would highly recommend doing that, and you're absolutely right. You want to let them know about you. They don't necessarily have the time to scour every single person who's playing football, high school football, because how many is it? You know the number right off the top of your head.
It's
every year. In your speeches, you always say.
A couple million, of kids. And you're trying to be one of those. You're trying to be
one of them. So you need to be proactive. I always tell kids, you need to be proactive. You need to let them know about you. Follow them, DM them, email them, go through staff lists, email them. Make yourself a little, it's like a little resume, right? Yep. A little bio on yourself. It's perfectly fine to go contact them and let them know about you on your social media and through emails. Yeah,
and something else that I hear constantly from coaches, and we talked about this last week with Mac Markway and Cook when they were in high school. They're recruiting athletes, so if they can see you doing things off the field, like in a training environment, like just in street clothes, they love it, right? If it's just athleticism, running through a hurdle or something like that, or speed hurdles or over hurdles or speed ladders. Take that with a grain of salt, but doing something athletic, so they can see you, like as a quarterback, they can see the mechanic, or in a one-on-one environment with a O lineman, D lineman, where you're actually just having to be athletic and use your feet, and you can't bull rush and all those aspects. They love seeing that stuff. Yeah. They absolutely love it.
That, like you said, training PRs if you're in your lifts. If you're doing any kind of combine type stuff that you can show them, love it. If you go into a place like Elite, and doing one-on-ones, or they can, your parents maybe videotape you training, running through drills and stuff. Yep. All that stuff goes into the evaluation process. The more data they have, the better.
Yep, the easier it gets. And I think that's something that I think a lot of people miss in the process, right? And I think there is a rhythm to all this, right? As the season wraps down, then we're going to start entering this winter. We're going to be talking about going to combines, right?
Yeah.
Why do you run a winter combine? You run a winter combine, or late winter, early spring, because they've now had a chance to evaluate film, but they want to see what your height, weight, where you are as compared to where you were back in the summer when they had their last measurements, right? So have you progressed? Have you gotten faster? They also want to know what they're seeing on film, because you have to understand sometimes they have no context of what is on film, right? they don't know what level 2A in Missouri is compared to 4A in Indiana, right? They want to know like who you are and who you're playing against, but then they want to compare it down to height, weight, speed, measurables. Because if they don't have that, it's really difficult. And they understand if a coach puts his name on you and he misses, it can doom his career, right? So this is how they get paid. This is what they do on a daily basis. And the fact that they don't want to put their name on someone without having all the data, right, is really something you need to understand. That those guys, so the better relationship you can build, the more trust, the easier it is for them to. They also get graded on the fact is like the guys that they offer, do they commit to them, right? So if you're a bunch of guys offered a bunch of kids that don't commit, that's a knock as well on the coach. So, it goes both ways. So building relationships, being prepared is really what your focus needs to be, right? As you finish the season, we're at the halfway point.
Yeah, we're almost halfway there.
Yeah. So you finish the season, there's work to be done.
There's a lot of work to be done. I was in beautiful Columbia, Missouri. You spent part of your life in Columbia.
Great.
Got to watch Helias against Rockbridge. Had a little bit of a brain freeze. Helias against Rockbridge, and it was a really good game, hard fought game. In the end, Helias won 20-0. Things did not go Rockbridge's way, including calls. You expect a little bit of home cooking sometimes from the refs, but they weren't having any of it. So in the end, Helias beat Rockbridge 20-10. Got to see Brady Davidson again in person. Yeah. By the way, talked with Brady's dad. He said, "Tell you hello."
Yeah, great guy.
Saw you at the Lindenwood camp.
Lindenwood
camp, and he's like, "I saw Matt. He's doing the training thing." I'm like, "Yeah." And really great family, really great guy. Yeah. Ben Davidson, really great guy. Brady's a really great guy. I had a chance.
Big kid, man. Really good son.
Almost 6'6". I had a chance to talk to Brady Davidson, and here's what he had to say after the game.
Brady Davidson, 2025, Rockbridge High School. We've got offers from Miami of Ohio, Northern Iowa, and Kent State.
What schools are you hearing from the most?
I'm hearing from a whole bunch of Big 10 schools, Big 12, SEC schools. I've already been to Iowa State and Mizzou. I'm heading to Miami of Ohio tomorrow. And then I've got hopefully K-State, Nebraska, and then Tennessee.
What does Mizzou and Iowa State had to say about you?
A whole bunch of love. Staying in contact, hoping to follow through with them for the future.
Tough loss tonight, but you guys have bounced back.
Yes, sir, for sure.
All right. Any other schools that you'd like to hear from?
Nothing specific. Wide open. I love any school, SEC, Pac-12, Big 12, anything. 6'5.5", 205.
And have you tested your 40, your vertical in the offseason?
Yes, 4.9 and I think a 34-inch.
There you go. Almost 6'6", 205 pounds, and athletic as can be.
Yep.
And running a sub-5 when you're quarterback, that's what they're looking for.
So we've tested so many kids, right? Like, and it is so interesting to hear the myriad of scores,
mm-hmm.
And what people realistically should be running versus what their unrealistic expectations are.
Yeah.
So especially when it's a laser timed 40, I mean, you've witnessed it. Oh, the laser's broken. I ran 4 or 5.
Right.
It's
I'm
like
faster
the kid just
than
ran
that.
a 5.2.
Yeah.
The reality of it is that, I always tell guys, like, if someone's coming and running a 4.9 on a laser, I mean, that's a 4.7 hand time
mm-hmm.
is what it equates to. And, like, if you can run sub-5 on lasers, I mean, you are moving. That is, you're faster than the vast majority of human beings on the face of the earth. So just being realistic, too, what those scores are. Like, again, do college coaches put an overemphasis? I would say that they want guys that fit certain molds. You got to be in brackets. You don't have to be, as a quarterback, you don't have to be a 4.3 guy, 4.4 guy. Those guys are really rare,
very rare
to begin with. And so the college coaches know that. They test kids at camps. They know what they're up against.
Right.
So,
but there are guys who do run 4.5, 4.6, 4.7 lasers.
Yeah.
Those are the really fast guys, and I know that they're really fast. Right. So you know that that's going to happen. I also had a chance to speak with, after the game, somebody that we both know and like, Mr. Chase Wisecarver, who had finally made it back on. He transferred schools. He was at Osage, then he transferred to Helias, and Misha put a hold on it for a minute, and now he was eligible. Played against Cardinal Ritter, played in this game, had a really good game, and I spoke with him following the game.
I'm Chase Wisecarver. I play for Helias Catholic. I'm a left tackle. I'm a scholarship from Missouri State.
So what other schools are you hearing from?
Middle Tennessee, Mizzou, Kansas. I'm going to Missouri State tomorrow. I'm hearing from MTN. And then Iowa State, K-State.
Any other game day visits besides the one you're taking tomorrow to Missouri State?
Kansas is October, and I think I'm going to get another one to MTN.
Game eligible. Thoughts on being here in Helias?
I'm happy to be here. I love the school. I love the team. It's a good team. I like playing for them.
Yeah, 2 big games in a row. Big win tonight.
Yes, sir.
Your thoughts?
I mean, I'm just proud of the team. I'm proud of the way we can play, and just we'll see Cardinal Ritter in state.
Such a good kid. So happy for him. And, of course, obviously, you know him well. For the
Yeah, they live at the Lake of the Ozarks area, and then they moved to Jeff City. Mm-hmm. But he's a kid that they still come in town to train, and he makes it a priority. He also trains at our Jeff City location. His dad does some help there with that, and just great family. His brother Brody is over at Tulsa, and big, strong guy. Yeah. He was playing at Illinois. They had a coaching change.
There you go.
They had a philosophical difference. They wanted kids that were not recruited by the old staff. They wanted guys that they
everybody wants their guys.
They want their guys, and so he's at Tulsa. He's doing really well there, and Chase is a guy on the rise.
Oh, heck yeah. 6'5", 280-pound kid, playing left tackle, just did a phenomenal job.
And you know what? I'll toot our own horn. Jamie Pond, who heads up our O-line group,
best in the business.
He is phenomenal.
Without a doubt.
I mean, if you look at the kids that have come out of St. Louis, offensive line wise, that from a technique perspective, that have gone on and played. It's a high number of kids. It really, really disproportionate to like.
Right off some names: Josh Baker, Miles McVay. Yeah.
You got Mike Neese, who's we talked about. He's playing with the Lions. B.J. Wilson, another guy. He's bouncing around the NFL.
Jamie Pond guys.
Yeah, all guys. Andrew Ness, Gabe Kuhn. Guys 4-year starters. When they get to college, it's one thing to go to college. It's another thing to get to start. And I think it's one of those things where like a guy like Chase, if you watch him, he's very patient. A guy like Miles, very patient.
Josh Baker, very patient, very technique oriented. Not the biggest guy in the world. Came in, played as a freshman at Arizona.
Yep.
Because he trained, he had the technique, and he just kept working. He just kept building.
Yep, and he'll be a guy that I think has a legitimate shot in the NFL.
And you know what's funny, Matt, is I said that at a combine in Kansas City when he was still in high school. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at him, and I said, you'll have an opportunity to play in the NFL because of the work you do, because of the training that you do, the technique, and the little things that he focused on to get better.
Yeah, and it's hard to explain to people too, because there are kids that will get offers that don't do a lot, that they have been blessed with size and athleticism. But they have to understand, like the way it works in practices, you do not get the skill work that you believe you're going to get. Yep. You get less than what you got in high school, right? I was talking to a friend of mine that coaches high school receivers yesterday, and he played in the NFL. And he told me, he's like, we get 8 minutes of practice. That's what we get for individual. And he said, I have everybody over there, JV and varsity. He goes, you know how many reps they get? A few, right? He said, if I could spend time with them, I could make my receiver core elite level. He's like, I have no time. And guess what? As soon as practice is done, I'm done. I got to go back to my life. So, to pretend that you're just going to be a guy that overworks and outworks someone just by doing what everybody else is doing is just simply not the case. And I know I'll beat this drum because I've done it and I've seen it work so many times. If you want it, you got to work extra for it. It's as simple as that.
Right. A guy who's working for it, working towards that. Also on Jeff City Helias, I spoke with Mason French, who's a guy who actually trains at the elite Midmo facility that you guys have. And Mason had a great game, 138 yards rushing, a couple of touchdowns, really a high-level athlete. He's one of these guys that we talk about who has the athleticism, but he's not getting the high-level looks. So here's what Mason had to say following the game.
Mason French,
Helias Catholic High School, running back 2024. Offers from Culver Stockton and Mid-American Nazarene University.
What schools are you hearing from?
I'm hearing from Illinois Wesleyan, UCM, Mo State, Illinois a little bit, Drake a lot, Central Methodist. That's about it.
Any game day visits coming up?
Yeah, I got Mid-American Nazarene tomorrow, UCM on October 7th, Benedictine November 11th, and Central Methodist in September.
Big win tonight. A couple of touchdowns from you. Thoughts on tonight's game?
I thought it was a great game. It was a team win, and we all motivated each other the whole game, and we were the tougher team tonight. Rockbridge played very good, and all respect to them.
Exciting game last week. You guys almost pulled it out. Thoughts on your season so far?
I think the season's going great. I think we got a great shot at the state title. You know, just expect to see us there.
What were your thoughts on last week's game? Down to the wire.
Last week's game, you know, down to the wire. We didn't,
against a great team.
Yeah. Number 1 team in the state. You know, we didn't complete, but I think it made us stronger, and that's why we won this week.
Right. So you're a heck of an athlete. Give some of your numbers. What's your 40 and your vert?
My 40 is a 4.55. My vert is a 38, but I just recently jumped to 39, but it was undocumented. I have a 10'2" broad jump, and my show time's about 4.21.
Are schools looking at you as an athlete, running back?
They're looking at me as an athlete. I've got a couple talks about, you know, the flex position, the wing a little bit, and, you know, mostly running back, but it ventures out a little bit.
I was going to say, you're a versatile guy. You can play slot, you can play corner, you can play running back.
Yeah.
All right. So, again, those numbers, and those are verified numbers.
So, we've tested thousands of kids, literally thousands of kids. I mean, each summer we do 2,200 minimum at Lindenwood, right?
Yes.
But so we're probably, I would say we've probably tested north of
that and 300 at elite.
Right. So we probably tested north of 15,000 kids over our career span. Mm-hmm. One thing that people don't quite understand, right, and a lot of kids, and so when he says 4.55, and then the two other numbers that stand out are the 38 and the 10'2".
There's a correlation.
All those match.
Yep.
Okay, that's the triangle. If those match each other, you're a dude. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that. But here's the thing: there are kids that will run a 4.5, 4.6,
and have a 26 vertical jump,
and they broad jump 8.5 foot.
Right.
So if you start getting over 9.5 to 10 foot in high school, you're a high level performer, right? If your vertical leap and your broad jump don't match the 40, or one of those is off,
right?
It's an indication that there's something either up with the testing, or there's something that's going on athletically with you, like with the hips, or just the ability to connect the chain when you're moving.
Or if you're a guy who jumps 35 inches in a vertical and you're not running close to that, if you're running like a 5 and you don't know how you're running your 40, which is important, which you know you offer training on how to run.
We would rather have the guy that has really good jump scores and a slow 40, because that's a technique issue.
Right.
9 times out of 10, because they can produce the force.
But with help, you can get that 40 number 100%. Where it needs to be.
100%. A lot of the 40 is really technique laden.
Absolutely.
You know, like pro guys that we're going to train in the off season for their pro day, they're 6 to 8 weeks going a couple times a day, and a big portion of that is 40 technique work and testing technique work.
Right.
So but those are great numbers. He's sitting in a good spot. He'll be a guy that flashes at a university where, even if he goes to a smaller school, he'll be a guy that can move move in and out or set records.
Exactly. He's one of those kids that we were talking about who, for whatever reason, is not getting the looks that he deserves, but he'll go to a school. It's a good fit for him, and he'll produce.
Yep.
And from that, who knows? He might move up. He might be like a Cody Schrader, move up to a big school like Mizzou, but you never know. A couple other recruiting things before we get out of here. A guy we also know pretty well, Triston Abram, who was just at your facility last night, I do believe, training.
Yep.
Picked up an offer from Kansas, 2025 defensive end, CBC. Guy came to the combine, done well, comes in there, trains there.
Yeah, big, strong, athletic, right?
6'5", 215, absolutely. Just a heck of a motor.
Yep.
Very fast off the edge, which is where he's getting looks. And the interesting thing about him is he still has a high ceiling. He's still really a baby. You know what I mean? And I don't mean he's a baby. I mean physically.
In the grand scheme.
Exactly. Yeah. He's not as physically developed as he's going to be.
Yeah.
Or with his knowledge.
I think too, as people have to look at their projecting kids, right? And they want to know, like, hey, this guy fits this mold. Mm-hmm. Once you start getting the height and a little bit of size to you, that it's really important that just because the schools they don't want to see. I look back on one of our all-time favorite quarterbacks, who athletically, he probably had we can talk about his recruiting and everything that happened with him because it's a very unique story. A kid named Dalton Demos, quarterback at CBC many years ago.
Heck of an athlete.
6'5", but he didn't have the weight on him yet, right? But he was a high level. 4'4" guy, almost 11-foot broad jump, like bizarre numbers. Mm-hmm. But
Dad was an Olympic athlete.
Yeah. Just great family. Sisters are both Division I tennis players. But the size, his lack of ability to put on weight, really hindered him as far as being a national. He had Division I. Don't get me wrong. He had a Division I. He went to Coastal Carolina out of college. But we'll talk more about his story because it's really interesting how it all worked out for him. And but that was a holdback, right? He had all the measurements except for the weight, which you would think, conventional wisdom would say a college is like, well, that's the easy thing. We could put weight on you. But we'll get more into this in future weeks. Yep. But putting weight on kids now has gotten a lot easier. Like we have a program called Off Season that's directed by a gentleman named Jacob Buffa, who is the director of sports science for the Astros. So he actually owns part of a business that we have where we train athletes and design programs, and it's all done based off of algorithmic features. And true metrics of what the athlete presents with, like how much strength they have, how much power they have. And we're able to predict weight gain now, right? So like our average weight gain for kids in a 6-month cycle is 15 pounds, right? But that's important. But what's more important is that their strength and power metrics ride.
It's good weight.
And they go up, right? You don't want to get bigger and slower.
No, that happens when you get older.
Right.
Guys.
Yeah, real fast. They're real fast. You won't see me running a 40 anytime soon.
Right. You're not the flash that you used to be.
No.
Not anymore.
Hamstrings can't hold up.
Yeah, real quick. Briggs Houston down in West Plains, tight end, got a preferred walk-on. We'll talk a little bit more about preferred walk-on offers, which is very interesting. It's a very good subject. They're trying. He's committed to Northern Iowa. Mizzou offered him a PWO. Some schools like to try to come in there and steal a good thing. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah,
and it's an opportunity. But if you already have a D1 offer, we'll talk about that.
So something to tease on that is, I had a coach tell me there's no such thing as a walk-on anymore.
Right.
Because there's no scholarship limits with NIL.
Exactly.
So depending on how schools are playing it,
trying to get a steal.
Seismic shift.
Yes, absolutely.
Seismic shift.
Absolutely. Last thing before we get out of here, we're running out of time. There's so much to talk about. We could do this for 5 hours.
All day long.
All day. That might happen.
We will do this. As we leave the show, we'll just keep talking to each other about the same stuff.
It's hard to stop. And one day maybe we'll do like a 24 hours live stream for charity or something.
Well, we are going to be starting to do some of our shows live, I think, which will be pretty nice.
Pay attention to that. So that's why you want to make sure that you go ahead and follow at Football360 Show on Twitter, JP Rock MO on Twitter, Elite Football
on
Twitter. As well, go to our YouTube and like and subscribe. You subscribe, you're going to be notified when we're going live. Real quick before we get out of here, though, a couple of guys I wanted to mention. I do a weekly article called Show Me State Stat Monsters.
Awesome.
And some of these guys, I want to mention Dakota Troost from Boonville, 2024 wide receiver, holding 9 passes for 227 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just an explosive athlete. Another guy who's a little bit off the radar from schools, but he's the guy that people need to pay attention to. Jackson Sommerville from Hazelwood Central, who we're familiar with, had a heck of a night. Yep. 6-9, completed 6-9, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had 3 more touchdowns and 165 yards rushing. True dual threat. He's a D1 guy. Yep. Kid out of Hallsville, Missouri, named Brayden Matheny. 377 yards and 5 touchdown passes on 25 of 35, which is amazing. Also ran for a score, 6 touchdowns in the game. And a guy we're familiar with, local guy in St. Louis, Zach Allen, who I believe you might have retweeted or mentioned. 5 catches. He's just a sophomore. 5 catches, 174 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
He is a kid who works. He shows up.
Yep.
He doesn't, Sundays and Wednesdays, I don't know that I saw him miss many, if any, in the offseason. He did 7-on-7 with Boom. Marco Sanson, his quarterback. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a prime example. Off season, Marco comes in and trains. He invites his other receivers to come in and just catch for him. Zach was there every time.
Every time.
Every time. And his mom had to drive him because Marco is driving himself. His mom got him there. Yeah. And I remember saying to Marco, he's going to have one heck of a season. He's like, yeah, they shouldn't sleep on him. They got a bunch of other guys, don't get me wrong, that are great. But he's going to be special.
He is going to be special. He's a guy who's been working it since he was in 8th grade when I first saw him, and you knew he was a guy. And it's just taken a little bit of time. He's a sophomore now, holding right now a 93-yard touchdown reception, school record. Yeah. And he also plays on a team with a gentleman by the name of Wingo. And now he can say he has the longest touchdown in school record. Very cool. It's very cool being here with you guys. Very cool of you guys to join us and watch. Remember to check us out on YouTube, Football360 Show, and we will talk to you next week.
Share it with your friends.
Share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff.